Hi, I'm Kaylin Karpinko and I'm an instructional designer. This presentation will focus on copyright, fair use, intellectual property, and open educational resources. And we're going to look at these topics in relation to online course design. This presentation is created under the Fair Use Guidelines. First of all, why should you, as an online instructor, know about copyright and fair use? Perhaps the most important reason is that copyright laws and fair use guidelines protect you and your work, as well as other individuals who create content. Secondly, this is very important for online instructors to know simply because internet sharing capabilities make it very easy for unauthorized individuals to make use of created works. As a copyright owner, you will hold exclusive rights to a work, such as making copies, creating derivative works, distributing works, or displaying or performing them. There are 4 primary copyright guidelines or questions to ask yourself when creating content for your online course. First of all, what is the character of the use of the work? Secondly, what effect would the use have on the market for the original work? Thirdly, what is the nature of the work to be used? And lastly, how much of the work will you use? This slide will help you stay in compliance with those first 2 guidelines, dealing with the character of the use of the work as well as the effect on the market for the original work. Basically, if you're a teacher using a work for non-commercial purposes inside your own classroom, then you will satisfy this criterion. However, if you plan to distribute the work beyond your classroom, say for example via DVD, you may not qualify for the fair use exemption simply because this can be destructive for the market value of the original work. This slide will assist you with the 3rd guideline, or the nature of the work to be used. If the work has been created for public use in the public domain or is older than the copyright laws, you will satisfy this criterion. However, if the work is an original or creative work, proceed with caution. These works typically require permission of the owner. This slide will help you with the 4th guideline, or the amount of work to be used in your online course. If you follow these guidelines, then you will satisfy this criterion. For motion media and text, a good rule of thumb is about 10% of the original work. However, poems are a little bit more specific. They have a word specification of 250, and they're further limited to 3 poems or portions of poems by a single poet, or 5 poems or portions of poems by different poets from a single anthology. Again, we can see the 10% rule is a good rule of thumb because it can generally apply to music, photos and images, and database information as well. Here are some additional guidelines pertaining to fair use. These come from Cohen-Rawson's book, Teaching Online, A Practical Guide. The first one applies to students. It states that students may incorporate portions of others' works into their multimedia creations, and they can display those creations for academic assignments. Next, we look more specifically at some faculty guidelines. The first one states that faculties can incorporate portions of other works into their multimedia creations. Next, we see that faculty may demonstrate their multimedia creations at professional symposia and retain them in their own portfolios. Next, there is a time limit on fair use by faculty, and this time limit is 2 years from the first instructional use of the multimedia work. And lastly, we see that there is a 2 copies limit. However, joint work creators may each have a copy. Next, we'll discuss the importance of intellectual property in relation to online course design. Intellectual property refers to your created works as an instructor. It is crucial that you find out your institution's policy on the legal status of your work. Some questions you may want to ask are, do I have clear ownership rights to the course content I create, such as syllabi, lecture notes, and course outlines? Or do I have clear ownership rights to the original material that I create while teaching online? Some institutions will not grant you clear ownership rights to your work simply because they consider that work to be work made for hire. Other institutions may unbundle your work, which means that you maintain ownership rights to your work. However, they can still use that work if they choose to do so. Your intellectual property as an online instructor is crucial to protect. Here are some ways to do that for your online course. First of all, you can copyright your material before making it available to your institution or class. Next, use common sense. Caution students that your materials are not for distribution. Next, you can use a password-protected site or learning management system to deliver your course material. Also, you can use programs such as Adobe Acrobat, which provide options for limiting unauthorized use of your material. And lastly, you can conduct online searches periodically. You can take a specific sentence from one of your original works and see if your search results contain any copyright offenses. Lastly, we'll discuss open educational resources. These are resources that are offered free for use by nonprofits and educational institutions. They typically require attribution to the original creator. To the right of the screen, you'll see some examples of resources that could come from these, such as small learning objects, images, quizzes, lesson plans, syllabi, discrete modules, or even entire courses. Here are some examples of some open educational resources. I encourage you to take a look at these sites as they contain some really great resources to use for any online course. Also, if you want acknowledgement and attribution of your work that is on publicly available sites, consider obtaining a Creative Commons license, and I have linked instructions for doing so. Here are the references that were used in creating this presentation. Thank you.